You want me to squat? I can't squat. So in this video we're going to talk about exercise and how you progress exercise. Obviously people often think, well, you've given me an exercise and it is what it is, or the way you demonstrate it is the only way to do it. And also they kind of concern themselves over how they're going to progress the exercise or even regress the exercise. Obviously an exercise can be made harder and easier, and this is something that's really important to be aware of when it comes to your progression. You have to find the level that your load tolerance or your injury tolerance is at that moment in time. And then once you adapt to that load tolerance and that load and that exercise, you advance. Now advancements can be stretch, range, load, repetition, it can be set number. There are a lot of variables around where you can manipulate this. And the example I gave earlier about the squat is basically a squat can be, as they call, ass to grass, which is where your bum hits your heels, touches the ground, super deep. That obviously is a squat. But also, so is bending your knees a millimeter is a technical squat. Obviously that means you've got all of that allowance within your squat to find the level that you tolerate. And obviously as you go further down, then obviously the demand of the exercise is going to increase. The load is going to increase. The stretch is going to increase. So this is the key to all exercises. So even a squat can be made easier. You can make a squat easier with weight. You can make it easier by even regressing it from body weight, which means you could do, say, a wall squat, which takes some of the weight out of it. You can adjust your foot position within a wall squat. You can therefore advance the depth and the weight within that wall squat, and then you can move on to a real squat that could be shallower and lighter, or body weight, and then you build the weight and the depth into that squat. So remember that the key is progression and finding your exact intolerance. The best thing to do is to start on the low end on the sets, the low end on the reps. Keep the range of motion a little bit smaller. Start with just body weight, or if you've been really irritable with the problem, then start even lighter than that. At the end of the day, if you don't stir anything up, you can always go harder next time. Whereas if you overwork it, you've got to go easier next time, and that next time might be several days away because you've got to settle down first. So the key is there's a lot of trial and error in there, but if you start at a low enough level, hopefully there's more trial and less error, and you can then just progress. I've done this with injuries myself. Like years ago, I had a rotator cuff tear in my right shoulder. It took me at least 2 months to find the right level from going down backwards in terms of load. And eventually I found a load that my shoulder woke up the next day and said that was fine. And then I could build up from that point. In hindsight, I should have gone straight down to that level and built up. And when I did my other shoulder years later, that's exactly what I did. I was doing lateral raises in the gym with nothing in my hands at all, because any more would have stirred it up, and therefore I was able to then progress. My body adjusted to that level, I could progress, it adjusted, and so on. So bear in mind, you can adjust the loads, the ranges and everything else to your level, and then you build that level up. It has to progress, it can't stay the same, otherwise you'll stay the same. I was asked a question on a video to do with calf strains the other day, and they were saying, well, how do you progress doing calf raises if you can't even walk? Well, you can do a calf raise where you've got 99.999% of your weight on your good leg, and therefore very minuscule amounts on the other one. You can start off from the ground versus on a step, so you don't even have to do a full range of motion. And then as you get more tolerant, you then add more weight across. Then you can add more weight until you're on to one leg, and as you improve your range of motion, you can then develop into a calf raise on a step, single leg, then weight it and then build it up. Always monitoring every step of the way. Is it tolerating? Is it coping? Now there's two ways of using the yardstick of pain as a guide. One is this playing it safe route, which is you load it, you work it, you see how you feel during it, you see how you feel after it, and you see how you feel the next day. And the safe option is you have no adverse effects off all of that. Then what you do is, if there are no problems, you then build up, and you build up and stick with your next level, whether that's a depth progression, a load progression, whatever it is. And as long as it stays pain-free during, after, next day, then you're safe for that next progression. Whereas if you feel some adverse effect, and it's more importantly the after effects versus the during effects, then that means it's too hard, which means you go back to the previous level and stick. Now, there is a higher level advancement way of going about it, but I always say don't do this as a first port of call unless it's a certain structure which can get away with this. And that is that you work it hurts. Not too bad, but it hurts. You feel a little bit worse after, but again, only mild to moderate increases, and then you monitor how long that lasts for. And as long as it doesn't last for 24 hours, then that might be okay. And the reason I say might is because then you have to monitor how that goes on when you repeat that session next time. So say it went up from a 2 out of 10 to a 4 out of 10, and it lasted for 24 hours. What you need to see happen is when you repeat the identical exercise and session, that your actual pain levels are no higher and they last for no longer. And if you're adapting to it truly, then they should be reducing. So you might go from 24 hours of pain to 18 hours of pain, from 4 out of 10 to 3 out of 10. This means your body's adapting to the exercise, which is exactly what you're looking for. So if it is doing the opposite of this, which is that you were at 24 hours at 4 out of 10 and now it's gone to 36 hours and it's 6 out of 10, you're not adapting, it's actually overloading, which means you've got to actually reduce the difficulty of the exercise, which could be range, load, stretch, whatever happens to be at the appropriate level, and work it there. So anyway, that's pretty much what I wanted to go through today, is because there's always a little bit of confusion over exercise. What is a progression or regression? How do you make an exercise easier? What you need to listen out for and look for, and that hopefully clears that up. So anyway, that's it for this video, and I'll see you next time.